So I think it's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, maliki yawmiddin, iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim, wa ad-dallin, sadaqallahu al-'aliyyul 'azim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So last week we talked about leaving. We said that fasting, properly understood, is not an act of staying still, it's an act of movement. A migration, a departure from the house of the self, the structure of habits, reactions, and demands that we build around ourselves brick by brick until the walls become invisible. We identified the lock on the door, the idol of the ego, the pharaoh within. And we said that fasting is the first crack in that idol, the first defiance of that tyrant. We named one piece of furniture in the house and committed to removing it. And we heard the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and his righteous companions, tell us that we have not been abandoned on the road either. We have been invited to the banquet of God. And that's where we left off. But here's the thing about migration. You don't flee a burning house in order to stand on the street. You leave one place because you're going to another. And when you arrive, when you reach the door of wherever it is you are heading, there is a moment that every traveler knows. You look down at yourself, you see the dust on your clothes, the mud on your shoes, the grime of the road on your face and hands, and you think, I can't walk in like this. Not because the host will necessarily turn you away. As we said last week, the host is the most generous, the most merciful, the one who prepared the banquet before you ever thought to set out. But because something in you knows that the occasion demands more than just showing up. It demands that you show up clean. Think of the last time you were invited somewhere that mattered to you. A wedding, a meeting with someone you deeply respect, a gathering where you wanted to be your best self, as we say. What did you do before you went? You showered, you chose your clothes carefully, you checked the mirror, not out of vanity, but out of respect, out of the understanding that the occasion itself asks something of you. The month of Ramadan is that occasion. And the tradition tells us that the preparation required is not only physical. It's not only about the body's cleanliness, though that matters. It's about the state of heart. Because you can arrive at the most magnificent banquet on earth in a spotless suit and carry inside you a heart so coated with dust and rust that the residue of a year's worth of heedlessness has accumulated that you cannot taste a single thing on the table. The food is all there, the light is there, the host is there, but you can't receive any of it because the mirror of the heart, the instrument through which we perceive the divine, is essentially covered with rust and dust and dirt. Tonight, we talk about cleaning that mirror. We said last week that the journey has 4 stages: surrender, faith, migration, and struggle. Tonight, we're between stages. We've begun the migration, and now we must prepare ourselves for what lies ahead. We are on the road, and the road is dusty and dirty, and there is a river up ahead. And the tradition is telling us, stop here, wash. You will need to be clean for what comes next. This is session 2, the purification of the mirror. How to cleanse the heart so it can receive the light. Please give me a salawat and we move on to movement 1, the core concept, sin as grime, worship as washing.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So before we open any book of mysticism, before we enter the world of spiritual stations and inner states, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family and righteous companions, gives us an image so simple and so vivid that it needs no real commentary to land. Imam Ali, the commander of the faithful, peace and blessings be upon him, narrates in Nahj al-Balagha that the Prophet Muhammad said, and the references are in the write-up, "Verily the likeness of prayer amongst you is like that of a running stream," what we call a sari. at the door of one of you in which he washes himself 5 times during the day and night. What then could possibly remain of filth upon such a person? A river, not a bucket of water you must haul from a distant well, not a reservoir you must travel to reach. A river, a sari, a flowing stream at your door, right here, steps from where you sleep, waiting for you every morning, every afternoon, and every evening. And the Prophet is asking, with the gentlest of rhetorical questions, what possible dirt could remain on a person who steps into this river 5 times a day? The answer, of course, is none, if you actually bathe in it. And this is where Ayatullah Jawadi-Amoli pauses on the hadith and makes an observation that turns it from a beautiful metaphor into a diagnosis. He writes, and I want you to hear the honesty in this, and the reference, like I say, is in the write-up. Ayatollah Jawadi says, prayer is like a pure spring in which the one who prays washes at these 5 times. Prayer is a Kawthar, an abundant river, that purifies the human being naturally. If we do not feel this purification from prayer within ourselves, we must accept that we have not truly prayed. Our prayer may be valid or sahih, but it is not accepted or maqbool, because the prayer that is accepted is one that purifies the soul, speaks to the human being, and gives them glad tidings. Think about that again. The river is there. It has always been there. It flows at the door of every single one of us, 5 times a day without fail. And yet many of us, most of us, if we are honest, do not feel clean. We pray and we do not feel purified. We fast and we do not feel lighter. We worship and the grime remains. Not because the river has dried up, not because the water has somehow lost its power, but because, and this is the point that will anchor everything we discuss tonight, we are not truly stepping into it. We're standing on the edge, going through the motions of bathing and walking away while still covered in dust. The prayer is valid. The fast is valid. The form is correct. But the purification has not reached the heart. Notice now something about the image that the Prophet chose. He did not say the likeness of prayer is like a bath you take once a year. He said 5 times a day, every day. Why? Because we get dirty every day. This isn't because we're terrible people. It's not because we're sinners beyond redemption, but because engagement with the material world, its anxieties, distractions, demands, its constant pull on our attention and our desires, leaves residue on the soul. Every argument you have had today left a residue. Every moment of heedlessness, the scroll through the phone, the prayer you rushed through, the person you ignored, deposited a thin layer of dust on the mirror of the heart. Every flash of anger, every pang of envy, every transaction where you were less than honest, not necessarily with others, but with yourself, added to the film. This is not guilt tripping. This is spiritual hygiene. No one is ashamed of needing a shower after a day's work. The body gets dirty because it exists in the physical world. The soul gets dirty because it exists in the material world. Both of them need washing. Both need it regularly. And the 5 daily prayers are that regular wash. But here is the Ramadan move, and this is the turn that matters for us tonight. If the 5 daily prayers are a daily shower, what then is the month of Ramadan? The month of Ramadan is the deep clean. It is the annual immersion. 30 days submerged in the river, not 5 quick splashes, but a sustained soaking designed to reach the grime that daily prayer alone cannot dislodge. The dirt has calcified, the habits that have hardened into a crust, the sins of the tongue and the eyes and the heart that have been accumulating for months, for years, layer upon layer, until they no longer feel like dirt at all, they feel like skin. That is what this month is for. Not endurance, not performance, not the grim satisfaction of having survived another day without food. Washing. Deep, sustained, thorough washing. of things we have stopped noticing are actually dirty. And now I want to layer a second image, one that goes deeper than the river, because it addresses not just the dirt on the surface, but the condition of the instrument itself. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family and righteous companions, has said, and the reference is in the write-up, for everything there is a polish in order to remove rust and dirt, and the polish of the heart is the remembrance of God. And in a related narration from Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, the image is sharpened further. The hearts rust just as iron rusts, and their polish is the remembrance of God. The word used is polish, not cleaning, not wiping, but polishing. Cleaning removes dirt from a surface. Polishing, however, does something more. It restores the surface's capacity in order to reflect. A dirty mirror and a rusted mirror are not the same thing. A dirty mirror has something on top of it. Wipe the dirt away and the reflection returns. But a rusted mirror has been corroded from within. The reflective surface itself has been damaged. You can't just wipe rust off. You have to scrub. You have to apply friction, abrasion, sustained pressure until the metal underneath is exposed again and can do what it was made to do, reflect. And this is the image that tradition gives us for the heart. The heart is a mirror. Its purpose, its entire reason for existing, is to reflect the light of God. That is what it was designed for. That is what it does when it is healthy, when it is clean, when it is functioning as it was created to function. But sin, heedlessness, ghifla as we call it, and worldly attachment do not merely leave dirt on the surface, they rust it. They corrode its reflective capacity from within. And the Quran uses a very specific word for this. In Quran, Surah Mutaffifin, the chapter of those who give short measure, 83rd chapter of the Quran, verse 14, Allah says, "No, indeed, rather, what they have been earning has rusted upon their hearts." It has rusted over. It has encrusted. It has formed a layer so thick that the heart can no longer receive what it is being sent. And when the mirror is rusted, it does not matter how bright the sun is. The mirror reflects nothing. The problem is not the absence of light. Light is always there. God is always radiating, always present, always offering. The problem is the state of the mirror. This is why some people can stand in prayer and feel nothing. This is why some people can fast for 30 days and taste no sweetness. This is why the Quran can be recited in a room and some hearts are moved to tears while others are busy scrolling their phones. The light did not change, the mirror did. And this brings us to fasting, specifically to the mechanism by which fasting addresses not just the dirt, but rather the rust. Fasting is friction. That is its function at the deepest level. Hunger and thirst are the abrasive that scrubs the corroded surface of the heart. They don't do it gently. We said last week that the ego does not let you leave quietly. And here the ego does not let you clean it without resistance. The discomfort you feel in the fast is not punishment. It is the friction of rust being scraped away. It is the sound of the mirror being restored. But, and this is critical, this is the critical turn that bridges us to the next movement. The scrubbing only works if it reaches the entire mirror, not just one little corner. A person who stops eating and drinking has polished one small section of the mirror. The section that deals with, for example, appetite, with bodily desire, with the stomach's demand to be filled. But what about the rest? What about the section rusted over by the tongue, by gossip, by cruelty, by lies? What about the section corroded by the eyes, by what they consume, what they stare at, what they refuse to see? What about the section eaten away by the ears, by the idle talk that they observe, the backbiting they entertain, the cries of the oppressed they choose not to hear? If you polish just one corner of a mirror and leave the rest caked in dust, the mirror still essentially reflects nothing. And this is the question that will take us into the heart of tonight's session. We often treat the month of Ramadan as spiritual maintenance, a tune-up, a service, a way of keeping things ticking over until the following year. But the tradition describes something far more radical, a deep restoration, a scrubbing so thorough that it reaches parts of the heart we have forgotten are dirty. The question is not, am I fasting? Rather, the question is, what is my fast actually cleaning? Please give me a salawat and we move to the second movement, the inward lesson, the 3 ranks of fasting.
اللهم صل على محمد ومحمد.
So far, we've established 2 things. First, the soul accumulates grime, not because we are wicked, but because we are alive and engaged with the world. This is normal. This is expected. The river flows at our door precisely because we need it every day. Secondly, fasting is not merely abstention. It is friction. The sustained abrasion that scrubs not just the surface dirt, but the rust that has corroded the mirror of the heart from within. But now we must ask the question that most of us avoid. What exactly is this fast supposed to be cleaning? Because the tradition does not leave this vague. It does not say fast and good things will happen. It gives us a very specific map of what the fast must reach if it is to do its work. And that map has levels. The great scholar and spiritual wayfarer Mirza Maliki Tabrizi, may God rest his pure soul, lays this out with a clarity that leaves no room for comfortable ambiguity. In his work, in his masterwork on the spiritual disciplines of the year, Al-Muraqabat, which means the observances, he writes in the chapter on the observances of the blessed month of Ramadan the following, and the references in the write-up. He says, the ranks of fasting are 3. The fasting of the common people, which is to leave food, drink, and sexual relations as the jurists have established in its obligations and prohibitions. The fasting of the elite, which is to leave all of that while also guarding the limbs from disobedience to God in general. And the fasting of the elite of the elites, which is to leave everything that distracts from God, whether it's lawful or unlawful. Think about those 3 tiers again, slowly. The first rank, what we call Sawm al-Awam, the fasting of the common people, is what most of us think fasting is. No food, no drink, no physical intimacy from dawn to sunset. Everyone knows the rules. We've known them since the beginning. But let us be absolutely clear. This rank is necessary. This is the door. Without it, there is no fast at all. The jurists have detailed its conditions and they must be honored. But Mirza Tabrizi is telling us that this, all of this, is but the entry ticket. It gets you through the door. It does not seat you at the table. The second rank, what we call Sawm al-Khawas, the fasting of the elite, is where the fast begins to touch the mirror. Here the fast extends beyond the stomach to every limb. The tongue fasts from gossip, cruelty, and lies. The eyes fast from what they should not consume. The ears fast from what they should not entertain. The hands fast from what they should not take or strike. The feet fast from where they should not walk. This is the fast that reaches that rust. And the third rank, Sawm Khawas al-Khawas, the fasting of the elite of the elites, is the fast of those who have emptied themselves so thoroughly that nothing remains in the heart except God. Not just the forbidden is abandoned, but anything that distracts, even what is technically permissible, if it pulls the heart's attention away from the divine. Now, before your mind rushes to dismiss this as the providence and provenance of saints, as something profoundly beautiful but unreachable, pause for a moment. Mirza Tabrizi does not present these ranks in order to make us feel inadequate. He presents them so that we know where we are, and so we know where the road goes. A traveler is not humiliated by learning that the journey is long. He is humiliated only if he mistakes the first mile for the destination. And most of us, if we're honest, have been mistaking the first mile for the destination our entire lives. We have been performing the fast of the stomach and calling it the month of Ramadan. This is where Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, enters and sharpens the blade. In Adab al-Salat, the disciplines of prayer, in his discussion of the purifications required for genuine worship, he draws a distinction so precise and so devastating that it deserves to be engraved on the wall of every masjid and every home where a Muslim prays and fasts. He distinguishes between what we call al-ijza, sufficiency and validity, and al-qabul, acceptance. Imam Khomeini says, the reference is in the write-up, know that there is a difference between acceptance and sufficiency. Acceptance in worship is that upon which reward is granted in the hereafter, and through which one draws near to God. Sufficiency is merely that which removes the obligation from the servant, even if no reward follows from it. Let that sink in, let that settle, let that land. Your fast can be valid, technically correct, jurisprudentially sound, not a single rule broken, and still not be accepted. Valid means the obligation has been discharged. We will not be punished for having missed it. The box is, as we say, ticked. The form has been filled. But accepted or maqbool means something happened. Something moved. The fast actually reached the heart, scrubbed the mirror, brought you one step closer to the one you were fasting for. This is exactly what Ayatullah Jawadi-Amoli was pointing out when he said about prayer, and the same applies word for word to fasting. Ayatullah Jawadi said, our prayer may be valid, but it is not accepted, because the prayer that is accepted is one that purifies the soul. The reference is in the write-up. And now substitute prayer, or rather substitute the word fasting for the word prayer. Our fast may be valid, but it is not accepted, because the fast that is accepted is one that purifies the soul. The question then is not whether you are fasting or we are fasting. We are. The question is whether our fast is doing anything. Is it valid? Almost certainly. Is it accepted? That depends on what it is cleaning. And now the moment that should stop us in our tracks. Mirza Maliki Tabrizi narrates in the same chapter of Al-Muraqabat from Imam as-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him, the following, and the references in the write-up. A man narrated, the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family heard a woman cursing her servant girl while she was fasting. So the Prophet called for food and said to her, eat. She said, I'm fasting, O messenger of God. He said, how can you be fasting when you have just cursed your servant? Fasting is not merely from food and drink. Rather, God made that a barrier against what is beyond them, the obscenities of action and speech that break the fast of the one who fasts. How few of those who truly fast? How few are those who truly fast? And how many are those who are merely hungry? Think about that last line again. How few are those who truly fast? And how many are those who are merely hungry? Prophet Muhammad did not say your fast is reduced. He didn't say you've lost some reward. He didn't say try to be nicer next time. He said eat. Meaning your fast is already broken, not by food, but by your tongue. You polished one corner of the mirror, the corner that deals with appetite, and left the rest caked in dust, in rust. And a mirror with one clean corner reflects nothing. This is not a soft teaching. This is not a suggestion. This is the Prophet of God telling a fasting woman that her empty stomach means nothing, nothing, because her tongue is full. And before we distance ourselves from this woman, before we tell ourselves that we would never curse a servant, ask yourself what your tongue did today. We should ask ourselves what our tongue did today, what it did yesterday, what it does every Ramadan while your stomach sits empty and righteous. The backbiting at the iftar table, the sharp word to your spouse when the hunger made you irritable, the gossip exchanged over suhoor, dressed up as concern, the social media post that mocked, that belittled, that tore someone down, tight with fingers that had not touched food or water since dawn. The Prophet is not speaking to that woman alone. He's speaking to every one of us who has ever confused an empty stomach with a clean heart. So what do we do with this? What do we do? We do what we did last week. We get very specific. We get small. We get honest. Last week, we named one piece of furniture in the house of the ego and committed to examining it. This week, we move from the house to the body. Mirza Maliki Tabrizi and Imam Khomeini have given us a map with 3 tiers. Most of us live on tier 1. The work of this month of Ramadan, the real work, the work that actually polishes the mirror, is to begin the serious, sustained effort of moving to tier 2. Not tier 3, not yet. The ego is not threatened by aspirations so grand that they never materialize. It is threatened by the small, specific, daily discipline that actually changes behavior. So here's the exercise for the week. It's simple and it is hard. Pick one limb, not all of them. Not a grand resolution to guard every part of your body from sin. That's the kind of commitment the ego actually loves because it's so vast that it collapses under its own weight by day 3. And then the ego said, see, you cannot do this. Just go back to being hungry. One limb, one specific sin. If it's the tongue, and for most of us it is the tongue, then pick one thing, not I will stop all gossip. That's too big. Pick I will not speak about any person who is not present in the room. Or I will not complain about my spouse to my friends this week. Or when I feel the urge to say something cutting, I'll be silent for 10 seconds and ask myself whether this is the fast speaking or the ego speaking. If it's the eyes, I will not scroll through my phone between Maghrib and Isha. Or I will lower my gaze from one specific thing I know I should not be looking at. If it's the ears, I will leave the room when the conversation turns to gossip. Or I will not listen to that podcast, that program, that voice that fills my mind with noise and leaves no room for remembrance. One limb. One wall of the house, scrubbed clean this week. Then next week, another. This is how the mirror is polished. Not in a single dramatic, grand gesture, but in the slow, patient, daily friction of one corner at a time. Until, and this is the promise that the tradition holds us to, the reflection begins to appear. Faintly at first, a glimmer, a moment in prayer where something shifts, a moment at iftar where the food perhaps tastes different, not because the recipe has changed, but because the tongue that cursed yesterday is learning to be still today. A moment where you catch yourself about to say something cruel and you stop. And in that stopping, in that tiny invisible act of restraint, you feel something that you have not felt in years. The mirror working, light reflected, and the fast, God willing, accepted. Remember what Prophet said, how few are those who truly fast and how many are those who are merely hungry. Let us this Ramadan try to be amongst the few. Please give me a salawat and we move to movement 3, the outward call. What does a clean mirror reflect?
اللهم صل على
So there is a temptation, and it's one of the subtlest traps on the spiritual path, to mistake self-purification for the goal. You scrub the mirror, you guard the tongue, you guard the eyes, the hands. You move from tier 1 to tier 2. You begin to feel something, a lightness in prayer, a softness in the chest, a clarity that was not there before. And then, almost imperceptibly, a new voice enters. Look how clean I'm becoming. And the mirror, freshly polished, turns to face the wall. Because a mirror that exists for itself, that admires its own cleanliness, that polishes itself to enjoy its own shine, has defeated its entire purpose. A mirror exists to reflect. A mirror exists to take light from one place and send it to another. The moment it curves inward, gazing at its own surface, it becomes the most useless object in the room, a perfect reflector reflecting nothing. Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, saw this danger with devastating clarity. In the same discussion of purification in al-Salat that we mentioned earlier, he warns that the spiritual wayfarer's journey, even the act of purification itself, can become a trap if it is performed for the sake of the self. Imam Khomeini says, if the stations of the spiritual wayfarer's journey are pursued for the sake of attaining ranks and ascending to degrees, then they have not escaped the dominion of the self and of Satan. Such a person is merely walking in circles inside the house. A wayfarer like this is neither a traveler nor a seeker, and he has not migrated to God and his messenger. The reference is in the writer. Walking in circles inside the house, that's the image. You can spend an entire month of Ramadan scrubbing, polishing, guarding every limb, and if all of it is oriented inwards towards your own spiritual status, towards the pleasure of your own progress, then you have not left the house. You are not migrating, you are redecorating. The first session told us to leave the house of the ego. This session has been about cleaning the mirror of the heart. But now we must ask, cleaning it for what? Polishing it toward whom? A polished mirror in a dark room is useless. But a polished mirror in sunlight can illuminate an entire house, not by generating its own light, but by catching it and reflecting it to the places it could not reach otherwise, into the corners, into the crannies and nicks, under the stairs, behind the door where someone is sitting in darkness, waiting. This is the outward turn. This is why the tradition never allows the inner work to remain inner. Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, in the same passage describes the ultimate purpose of purification, the qurb al-nawafil, the nearness of the extra worship, in terms that shatter any notion of private spirituality. Imam Khomeini says, when the complete wayfarer who has arrived leaves the dark house of the self and folds up the world of the self entirely, the truth, exalted is he, manifests in his very existence. He hears through the truth and he hears nothing but the truth. He sees through the truth and sees nothing but the truth. He grasps through the truth and nothing issues from him except the truth. He speaks through the truth and speaks nothing but the truth. Reference, of course, is in the write-up. This is not mere mystical abstraction or just words. This is a description of what happens when the mirror is clean and the light arrives. A purified human being becomes a channel, a conduit, not a container. The eyes see truth, the tongue speaks truth, the hands act in truth. The light enters and exits, it passes through. And where does it go? It goes where it is needed the most, to the darkened corners of the world, to the places where injustice has drawn the curtains and locked the doors. Here is where the fast must break through the walls of the prayer room and enter the street. If your fast has truly moved from tier 1 to tier 2, if your tongue is learning to be still, if your eyes are learning to lower, if your hands are learning restraint, then something has shifted inside of you. The mirror is less rusted than it was. The reflection is beginning to appear. But what does a clean mirror reflect? It reflects whatever is in front of it. And what is in front of us right now in this moment of history is a world on fire. Children in Gaza breaking their fast with nothing. Their Ramadan not spiritual exercise, but still a siege. Families in places like Sudan displaced from the very homes we've spoken about leaving in session 1, except their displacement is not metaphorical. Communities everywhere ground down by systems that hoard light and distribute darkness. A polished heart cannot coexist with a silent tongue. Not the silence of restraint that we spoke about earlier, but the silence of complicity. There is a fast of the tongue that is worship, and there is a silence of the tongue that is betrayal. And the tradition distinguishes sharply between the two. The fast that guards the tongue from gossip must be the same fast that frees the tongue for truth. The eyes that lower themselves from distraction must be the same eyes that refuse to look away from suffering. And the hands that refrain from taking what is not theirs must be the same hands that give what is needed even when the cost is high. This is not an addition to the fast. This is not some sort of bonus level for the especially devout. This is the purpose of the purification. Imam Sajjad, peace and blessings be upon him, in his supplication for the arrival of the month of Ramadan, makes this inseparable connection. He does not pray for personal purification and then separately for social responsibility. He weaves them into a single breath. He says, and this is from supplication 44 of Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, verse number 9, grant us success in this month to strengthen our bonds of kin with devotion and gifts, to attend to our neighbors with generosity and giving, to rid our positions of all claims upon them, to purify them through paying what is due, to return to those who have turned away from us, and to deal justly with those who have wronged us. Look at the movement in that single verse, that single passage. Strengthen kin, attend to neighbors, purify wealth, let those return to those who have left, do justice to those who have wronged you. This is not a private dua whispered in the corner of a dark room. This is a social program. It is a manifesto for what a community of fasting people should look like when the mirror is working. And notice, to deal justly with those who have wronged us. Not to forgive in a way that erases accountability. Not to spiritualize injustice into a private lesson. To do justice. The Arabic word used is nunsifa, to give what is fair, to restore what has been taken, to make right what was made wrong. The clean mirror does not look away from the world. It looks into the world and reflects back the truth of what it sees, including the truth that demands action. So the question this week is not only, what limbs are you guarding? It is also, where is your light going? Who in your life is sitting in a dark corner, waiting for someone to redirect a little brightness their way? Not grand charity, not the kind of giving that gets announced. The quiet, specific, targeted act that only a clean mirror can see, because only a clear eye notices who has been overlooked. The elderly neighbor who has no one to share iftar with. The colleague at work who is struggling and has said nothing. A family member you have not spoken to in months or perhaps years because of a wound that your ego refuses to release. The causes that need your voices, your resources, your refusal to look away. The month of Ramadan is not a retreat from the world. It is a preparation for re-entry. We fast, we clean, we polish, and then we turn outward towards the world that needs what we have been given. A polished mirror that faces the wall is a disaster, a tragedy. A polished mirror that catches the light and sends it into the dark corners of the world, that is worship. That is the fast complete. Please give me a salawat. We move to the bridge to session 3, the Feast of Light.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So we have, over these 2 sessions, done 2 things. We left the house of the ego, and we began to scrub the mirror of our heart. Not just the surface dirt of daily living, but the deep rust of the limbs, the accumulated corrosion of a tongue unchained, of eyes unguarded, of hands undisciplined, and so on. And now the mirror is, God willing, cleaner. Not spotless, not yet, perhaps not ever in this life, but cleaner, clearer. Something is beginning to be reflected. But here is the question that opens next week. A clean mirror in a dark room, as we've said, reflects nothing. An empty stomach that stays empty is not fasting, it is starvation. The point of emptying was never the emptiness itself. It was to make room. Think about it. We have spent this session talking about what the fast removes, the grime, the rust, the sins of the limbs. We have not yet, however, asked, what does the fast put in? Because the tradition is very clear on this point. God did not invite you to Ramadan to starve you. He invited you to dine. And the menu is not what you think. Next week we sit at God's table, God willing. We ask what the soul actually eats. why joy is the secret ingredient of worship, and what it means that the Prophet of God, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and righteous companions, described this month as the banquet of God. If we've been thinking about the month of Ramadan as deprivation, next week we will change that, God willing. And next week brings something else, something the calendar has placed in our path with a precision that is not accidental. Next week falls on the 10th of Ramadan, the day we mark the departure of Sayyidah Khadija, peace and blessings be upon her, the woman who understood the banquet before anyone else did, the woman who took everything God gave her and fed it to the mission until there was nothing left. We will sit at God's table next week, God willing, and we will do so in the shadow of the woman who taught the entire ummah what it means to give everything to the feast and keep nothing for herself. Come hungry. And now we have the short, what we're calling the ballad for the rusted mirror. In the name of God, the most merciful, the compassionate. O light, O most holy, O beginning of all beginnings and end of all ends. This is the dua of one who has looked into the mirror and flinched. Imam Sajjad, peace and blessings be upon him, teaches us to ask, not in the language of the confident worshipper, but in the voice of the one who has just understood how deep the grime goes. He prays for a fasting that reaches every limb. He says, help us to fast in it by restraining our limbs from acts of disobedience toward you, and by employing them in that which pleases you, so that we lend not our ears to idle talk, nor hurry with our eyes towards diversion, so that we stretch not our hands towards the forbidden, nor stride with our feet towards the prohibited, so that our bellies hold only what you have made lawful, and our tongue speak only what you have exemplified. Every limb named, every limb surrendered. This is the prayer of someone who has understood, really understood, that fasting is not about the stomach. And in the deep night, when the limbs have been stilled and the mirror has been scrubbed and the rust has begun to lift, another voice rises, older, rawer, the voice of the one who knows the names of his own sins. From Dua Kumayl, Imam Ali says, O God, forgive me the sins that tear apart the veils of my honor. O God, forgive me the sins that bring down afflictions. O God, forgive me the sins that alter your blessing. O God, forgive me the sins that hold back supplication. The sins that hold back supplication. Think about that again. There are sins so heavy, so calcified into the mirror, that they block even the asking. You open your mouth to pray and the dua cannot rise. Not because God is not listening, but because the channel is clogged. The rust is so thick that even the cry for help cannot get through. This is why we fast. This is why we scrub. This is why we guard the limbs, not for the sake of discipline, not for the sake of spiritual achievement, but because there are words we need to say to God, words the world needs us to say to God, and the rust is in the way. So we scrub, one limb at a time, one corner of the mirror at a time, until the channel is clear enough for the voice to rise. And when it does, when the dua finally lifts, unobstructed from a heart that has been scrubbed, and a tongue that has been stilled, and a body that has learnt the differences between hunger and fasting, this is what it says. O God, we come to you with mirrors so rusted we can barely find your name in them. We come to you with tongues that fasted from bread, but feasted on cruelty, with eyes that lowered for no one, with hands that took and never opened. We come to you in the month you called us to your table, and we are ashamed, because we spent the whole banquet hovering at the breadbasket by the door. O God, by Muhammad, who was so full of your light that the world has not stopped reflecting him in 1400 years. By Sayyidah Khadija, who took everything you gave her, her wealth, her standing, her comfort, everything, and fed it to the da'wah, to the invitation, until there was nothing left of her but faith. She understood the banquet before anyone, that the food passes through you and becomes life for others. By Ali, who ate 2 loaves of barley and disciplined his soul until it came safely on the day of the great fear. By Sayyidah Fatima, who hungered in this world, so that the hungry of every world could eat. By Hassan, your Mujtaba, the Karima of the Ahlulbayt, who gave and gave and gave until generosity itself learnt its name from him. He did not hoard the karama, the generosity, he became it. And by Hussein, who was denied even the water of the Euphrates, and whose thirst became the river from which every revolution of justice has drunk and flows. We ask you, do not leave us as we are. We know why he is hidden from us. We know why the Imam of our age, your proof, your light, your remnant, your argument against us and for us, walks this earth and we cannot see him. It is not because he has abandoned us. It is because our mirrors are too rusted to reflect him. It is because our eyes are too full of everything else to recognize him. It is because we have been so busy feeding the self that we have starved the only part of us that could bear his presence. O God, we are the reason for the longest night in history. We are the ones whose disobedience extends his absence, whose heedlessness thickens the veil, whose cruelty to each other makes us unworthy of the one who will fill the earth with justice as it has been filled with tyranny. We know this, and knowing is not enough. So we ask you, not from the station of righteousness, not from the station of the elite, not even from the station of the common believers, but from below all of that, from the floor, from the place where the only honest prayer left is help. Help us become worthy of him. Help us scrub this mirror, limb by limb, sin by sin, day by day, until something of his light can be reflected in us. Help us move from the fasting of the hungry to the fasting of the watchful, and from the fasting of the watchful to the fasting of the broken open, those who have nothing left in them but you. Give us the strength to guard one limb tomorrow that we did not guard today. Give us the courage to speak one truth this week that our silence has been burying. Give us the ache, the blessed, unbearable ache of missing someone we have never met, but whose return depends on whether we change. O God, for his sake, do not let this month of Ramadan pass the way others have passed, with nothing cleansed, nothing polished, and nothing changed. For his sake, make us among the few who truly fast, and not among the many who are merely hungry. For his sake, and for the sake of every soul that is waiting in the dark for a window to let the light in, polish us, break us open if you must, but do not leave us as we are. O God, efface our sins along with the effacing of its crescent moon, and make us pass forth from the ill effects of our acts with the passing of its days, until it leaves us behind, while within it you have purified us of offences and rid us of evil deeds. O God, send your blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and hasten their relief. Amen, O Lord, sustainer of the universes. Amen, O most merciful of the merciful. وآخر الدعواني أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.